What's going on, you guys? So in the last video we did a teardown and review of that radium cell right there. Now I need to get that into the car. So the first thing I need to do is turn this thing around because all the work I got to do is on the back and all my fabrication equipment is over here. And it's snowing outside and I got some bald ass tires on the back of the car. I thought they were new. I don't know what happened. Alright, well, let's try and turn this thing around and see if I get stuck in the snow. I did fix the rear main seal on this too. I think I need to bleed the clutch a little better because it's having some difficulties going into reverse right now, which it never had before. So yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I parked crooked as shit. I'm gonna have to get it back a little bit further though to pull all the panels off and all that, because we're gonna strip the whole back corner, well, the whole back half of this car off. So everything's got to come off: quarter panels, bumper, trunk, rear radiator, radiator hoses, fill neck tube, all that to get the fuel cell out. But for now, I'm gonna let it warm back up in here because it got cold having that door open for that long. Comes apart really quick and easy, so I gotta go ahead, pull the radiator out and get to the fuel cell. So I'm gonna go ahead now and drain the coolant and get the rest of this stuff out of the way back here, and that way we can get started with actually fitting up the radium cell. Alright, so we got most of the back stuff out. We got the radiator out, all that. Radiator's over there. We got the fan shroud there. Took the little trim plates off. Went ahead, swiveled the taillights up out of the way. I gotta drain the fuel tank, which means I need to get something to put the fuel in. And I think all of my jugs are outside. Oh, it's tight. It's tight. So now we got to get the fuel out of this. But the issue is, with the way it is right now, it's not really high enough to just throw a jug under it and drain the fuel. And I have a much easier way of draining fuel on cars that have AN lines on everything. And all we're gonna need is my old vent hose. So basically what I'm going to do is just take this fuel line off. So we have our feed into this rail where the crossover is. And I don't really feel like this one's really easy to get to, so we're just going to use this one. Probably throw some fuel in there. Thread that onto the rail. So we routed that to the rail. We got it sitting in the jug here. Now I'm just going to go in the car, turn the fuel pump on, and we should be good to go. That is not flowing very fast. That is the maximum flow we were getting from that pump right there, and that is not very much at all. So I don't know if that pump that I had was just dying on its last leg or what, but that is unacceptable fuel flow for a car making close to 1,000 horsepower. And we're at 40%, 39. So fuel level is going down, you can see. Now, I don't know how much fuel exactly is in this tank, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that jug and then shut it off as soon as it gets full, or hopefully it drains the tank before it fills that jug. Well, the fuel gauge says 0, so hopefully it's close to empty. Yep, I hear the pump. So we had about another half gallon in there. Alright, now that the cell's all emptied out, I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of this stuff yanked up out of here and then catch back up with you guys once all this is cleared out. And then we can start trying to fit up the radium cell. Alright, so we got the back of the car all stripped down, fuel cell's out, old one's right there, radiator's out. Now, the question is, will that fit in there? I guess there's only one way to find out. Hopefully. Oh, yes. Look at that. It's like the perfect amount of room in there, actually. So it looks like it's gonna fit just fine. Now, my biggest concern was the coolant hoses because of that hard radiator line I had running across up to the radiator, which you can see is right here. Hopefully, it looks like we got plenty of room there. So I think we're gonna be good. Now I am going to need to build new fuel lines. So the old return line is not going to reach all the way over there, and the feed line that is all the way over there on that pump is not going to reach up there. So I'm going to have to build new lines. Luckily I have a little bit of line left over from some previous projects here. So what do I got? I think this is the 8. I think this is the 8 left over from this fuel system, actually. So we got the 8 left over from that, and then I got some 12 and 10 also. But we should be able to use that 8 to make longer lines for it. Hose ends, they're all vibrant hoses, so I should be able to reuse the hose ends on them because I always lubricate my fittings when I put them together, so that way they don't mess the threads up when you take them apart. So hopefully I can reuse all the hose ends without issue, and then we should be good. But for now, I got to get that out, start building a cage for it. So for the mount cage, I'm going to be using 1-inch square tubing and basically building an outer lip flange around here out of this material right here, and then building a cradle structure that will hold it all the way up, over, and around. And then after that's built, I have to fit that back up and try and find out how I want to secure that to the chassis, because where it's at in there, just dropping it in won't really be feasible. There won't really be enough room for that. So we're gonna have to make the cage bolt into the chassis, which was my original plan anyways, because I think it'll make it easier to work on in service. Even if I can make that so it kind of barely snakes in and drops in somehow, it's not worth the headache if I can make it so it's just 4 quick bolts and the whole thing comes out. But for now, I'm gonna get started on making that cage. So time to start cutting some steel. With it laid out, it's going to leave us just enough room, about an 1/8 inch all the way around, so it's nice and easy to drop on in there. So now that I know that's a good overall size for that, I'm going to go ahead, pull the plastic off my table and all that. So I'm going to go ahead, square these all up, put a couple tacks on each one, build the frame structure of it, and then before I final weld it, I'm going to test fit it and make sure it's all still good and didn't move around on me. So you might notice I have this on top of this flat aluminum plate, and that's because tables can be kind of wonky if it's not a perfect fabricating table, which this is not. This is a pretty wonky table. So I have this flat level surface plate here, to keep these all straight as I tack them, and then magnet in the center to keep it at a perfect 90-degree angle. So go ahead, get this thing tacked up. I would say that looks good to me. Go ahead and get it welded up the rest of the way. And then we're going to mark out our holes to put our mounting tabs in. Now my plan for how I'm going to attach this to the cage, these two, and these two bolts will use the original bolts to hold the lid down. And then the corners are going to use these And the corners that are going to use these will have riv nuts in the actual cage, so it'll just drop in. So I'm going to have to oversize the holes here so that the nuts on the other side can drop through, and then these will all have riv nuts. That way I can have the whole unit assembled together and drop it in without having to assemble the lid and everything else separate. Basically take the whole thing apart to install it. Because if I want to get this cage in here, all these bolts will have to be off to go in, where I can just carry it all over as one piece, drop it in, and then bolt it down with these 6 bolts and it'd be good to go. So I got to trace that out and start drilling and putting riv nuts in. Okay, now if you will notice here, I did not drill these holes big enough for this nut to actually drop all the way in through there. And I did that with the foresight that these riv nuts have a little bit of a shoulder on them. And that shoulder is about the same size as that. So I wanted these to just sit flush there. That way it's flush on all of them. And that way it's not going to be dipping down or wavy. It'll just keep it nice and flat. So now the moment of truth is, do they all line up? So I have bolts and nuts on the back of this panel right here, which is my top panel. That drops right in. Now I just got to make sure that these all line up. Hopefully they do. Last one. Look at that. They all line up, even with a tiny little bit of wiggle room if I need it. So I'm going to take it apart and fit the actual cell in it, and hopefully it all lines up still. I don't see why it wouldn't, but yeah, we're gonna do that now. Okay, so here's our cell. I was honestly not expecting them to all fit perfect first try. Usually when doing multiple holes on something like this, if one's off by a little bit, it throws the whole thing off and nothing lines up, but everything lined up perfect. Glad I used a center punch, because if I didn't use a center punch, I probably wouldn't have. And that is an outer frame completed for it. Yeah, that'll look really good in there. So now the next step is going to be building the cradle legs and planning out where we're going to bolt this to the chassis and how we're going to do that. But I mean, as for today, I've gotten a lot done. I actually have some things I need to get to today. So I think we will finish this up in part 2 of the install and just all the fabrication that we have to add to it. We're going to try and cover most of that. But yeah, it's coming along. Fits good. I like the design of it. I like the layout. It's going to look killer in the car. And, you know, 1,800 liters an hour of fuel will definitely help this thing out. So that's going to be it for this one. So like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Follow the build along. We'll finish this up in part 2. And until the next one, I'll catch you guys later.